Welcome back. I was hoping Jarod would follow on with that dum 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 dum.
My mouth was full of water. I was waiting for. I thought I had you to do the countdown while I was drinking, and then you just and I was like, mouth just spurting and destroying my whole setup here.
That had been content, so that'd been fine. I'd been okay with that.
Content slur, as I like to say,
but not slur.
No, there's certain.
Anyway,
when I use the word content, a lot of the time it is a pejorative.
No. Anyway, welcome to Pro and Noob.
Yes.
We're talking Cowboy Bebop episodes 11, 12, 13, or was it 10, 11, 12? I want to say it's 11, 12, 13.
That sounds right. I think.
I want to say.
Let's
Whichever
find out.
one starts with toys in the attic.
So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13.
Yeah. So 11, 12, 13. Mitch 692. Jarod.
From the Nerd Academy podcast.
Mm-hmm. Is that the right way for a change?
Yeah, you actually, yeah.
Yeah, I remember. I'll forget next time.
But yeah, this was a weird run of episodes. This went to a weird place. It starts super abstract, with toys.
A very important message.
Yes. What? Okay. I want to start with, I want you to tell me what you think Toys in the Attic is about.
Don't leave stuff in your fridge. Hygiene.
So we went to very different places with the moral of that story.
I mean, I went literal what the episode tells you, right?
I'm sure you did. No, I thought Toys in the Attic was really compelling. So I don't even know where to fucking start with this. So I liked the lesson structure and format, right? I thought that was really interesting, especially because where it ends. Because every person's lesson kind of outlines the flavor of loner every member of the Bebop is.
Yeah.
Except for Radical Edward, where
Ed doesn't get bitten in this, do they?
They do.
Do they? So I can't remember if they get bitten or if they just take a nap.
They may just take a nap. I know they eat it. I know they eat the glob monster.
So funny.
But I think that it's interesting that, I mean, hey, you know what? Maybe let's say they don't get bitten, because that will actually affirm my angle even more. Ed's lesson boils down to being the only curious person on the Bebop.
Yeah.
Being the only person on the Bebop who is not defined by a sense of screw them before they screw you, and people are, terminally imperfect, and you kind of have to do your own thing, otherwise you're going to get burned by others. And Spike really doesn't have like a monologue to himself lesson until the very end with the, don't let things go in the fridge. But that aside, Ed is the only person who goes, no, take interest in your fellow man. Find them compelling. Because if you're able to find something exciting in somebody else, you can then, take time for them. which is then set against the backdrop of Ed or of everybody else kind of being so blasé, you know, and again, it's everybody's like core vice. You know, Jet is a desperate man trying to make it through a desperate time. So when he's like, oh, the fridge, there's a fridge, and he's, you know, literally bet his entire wardrobe against Faye in a rigged game of dice. You know, his greed and his desperate greed, you know, is his undoing, and that's what leads him into the belly of this creature. Faye, it is her disinterest in the world around her and the people in it that lead her to first, along with Spike, callously disregard what happened to Jet, and then herself become a victim of it. Ein kind of pays the price for Ed's curiosity.
Yeah. Poor Ein. Didn't deserve
by getting bit. But I think in a funny way, while everybody else is having this very unsubtle self-talk monologue about how to move through an uncaring world, pardon me. I slept with the fan shooting into my face and my throat's so dry today. Spike manages in an episode that is quite meta, that involves the audience, or I'm sorry, involves the characters uniquely talking to the audience in a way that they typically don't. Spike still finds a way to bullshit his way around having an earnest conversation, even if it's a meta one.
That's Spike.
You know,
that's with Spike.
You know, like again, if Jet is defined by I'm desperate and I'm acting desperately, if Faye is defined by I pretend not to care and I force myself to be apathetic to avoid being hurt, which is explored later with you know, the goings on here with Jupiter Jazz. Spike's is I'm just gonna ignore it and run away from it until I can no longer. And I found that beautiful. I found it really interesting. And I was surprised that by the end of the episode, there was no resolution. There was no cure. There was no nothing. And it leaves me spiraling into my old ways a little bit.
Mind Palace?
Okay. So I got 3 for you. Okay. I got 3. I got 3 for you. Option 1. This episode is meant to be taken extremely literally.
Yeah, just don't put things in the fridge for a year.
Stop. I mean, in terms of canon. This episode is meant to be taken extremely literally, and everybody on the Bebop got super sick, but in between episodes got better. And that it wasn't lethal. They were just fucked up for a few days. Potentially the most logical answer. Option 2. This episode didn't actually happen. In terms of canonicity, this episode.
So you're saying we have filler?
I'm not calling it filler. I know filler. I don't like engaging with filler as a concept.
Yeah, but this is where filler has a legitimate stand and a legitimate point.
I understand what you mean. I'm just saying I don't think this. I'm just saying if you were to tell me to recite to you the complete canon events of Cowboy Bebop, I'm not necessarily certain that this episode was exactly canon. And I think on some level, this is kind of a mid-series moment to reflect and show what could be the undoing of these people. For Spike, it's the cowardly running away from his past and in the closure he owes himself. For Faye, it's apathy. For Jet, it's desperation. For all of them, it is heartbreak. For all of them, it is an inability to open up to the others and be heard in turn. And I think that it's not so much a thing that happens so much as that it is a visual manifestation of what could go wrong for these characters. It's almost like we as the audience stepped into the cave on Dagobah on behalf of the crew of the Bebop. If that makes sense. Option 3. They're all fucking dead.
Yeah.
And the forthcoming episodes are a series of fever dreams as they leave this mortal coil, and the Bebop is left stranded in the stars.
That's interesting.
I would not defend option 3 hard at all. It just crossed.
I wouldn't either. No spoilers. I wouldn't either.
Good. I'm glad. However, I think option 1 and option 2 can kind of coexist. I think option 1 of this happened and they got better is possible, while option 2, like, that can just be the subtext of the episode. That said, I thought it was really weird going into Jupiter Jazz that they, like, Spike wakes up all disheveled and feeling like shit and hot and sweaty and gross. And it turns into Faye has escaped again, and this time took the antifreeze out of the air conditioner when they very easily could have gone, hey, I still feel like shit from that crazy thing that happened yesterday. And I would have been fine with that. It's the fact that the episode ends, and then the episode preview is Radical Edward going, everybody died! The show's about me now! Then I was like, obviously, this doesn't have to be strictly canon. This episode preview, I don't think it's reasonable to hold anybody to the standard, of canonicity seeping into that in a very explicit, hard and fast way. However, I was just like, why did Ed say that?
Because it's a joke.
I know it's a joke, but I was like, the part of my brain that is a little bit legitimately poisoned by conspiracy.
A little bit in part of very strong words there.
Okay, there is a part of my brain that is a little bit infected by conspiracy.
There is a lot of your brain that is most definitely.
That's
just conspiracy. No.
That's not.
It's true. The flat part. It's that bad. It's gone flat. And there's a little ice wall around the edge of it.
That's not true. That's not true.
How do you know?
Because
prove it right now. Prove it right now.
I prove it by saying that I only a little bit thought of that crazy third option. Because part of me went, well, that would be batshit crazy. How the hell does that work?
I mean, you have a mind palace. How rational is that?
Very.
the insane person.
But legitimately, like what do you think of Toys in the Attic?
I really like it. I think it's trying to. What's the best way to put it without really? I think it's a bit of a precursor episode.
Okay.
Without really trying to say that it is one.
Because thematically, it does feel like it's teeing up Jupiter Jazz.
100%, yeah.
Like, I'm glad we're doing it in threes because we got to do this run of 3 episodes specifically.
But in fact, these 3 were always together anyway. When I have my little schedule list, they were always together.
I imagine so, because like I said, like this feels like it was meant to be like it was like set up and payoff. You know, like it was a thematic primer that I really, really enjoyed, you know, and I love when media does that, where it kind of sidesteps itself a little bit for a non like that for what feels like a non sequitur, but it is setting the table for themes. It's priming the audience for theme, and I really did appreciate it on that level. But yeah, getting into Jupiter Jazz, very happy to see Vicious again. Very happy to see Vicious again. Vicious is fun. Had a feeling he was not gone.
Nope.
Gotta say, those little sages, who I'm assuming are like the heads of the Red Dragon, the little thumbnail on Hulu, they looked like Yodas.
Yeah.
Like their side profile, the way their foreheads are wrinkled and that kind of like ovular shape to their eyes. I was like,
Old men in anime kind of get done dirty.
I don't even say they got done dirty, that they look like Yoda. I mean, a rare moment of me not doing Yoda slander, but you know,
you want to look like Yoda when you're like 70?
No.
There you go then.
I mean, at least not in the hair. I still have head-to-head sitting on the table, so that's why I'm like looking down at the book cover that he is on.
That makes you honest. Yeah. Because I wouldn't want to look like that.
No, at the very least, not the wispy hair. When I'm old,
just in general.
I'm gonna have a full head of hair when I'm old.
Yours or
mine?
Well,
mine. I got good genes. It's the one good thing my grandfather ever gave me.
So you're booking the turkey trip or what?
No. I don't need those Air to One hair plugs. Air to One's turkey, right?
Huh?
Everyone's turkey, right?
Everyone's turkey. Yeah.
Okay, I thought so. Anyway, not the point. But it was really compelling. It did feel like a lot of plot points from earlier in the season are actually coming to a head now. You know,
this is what I meant by like arcs are spread out. Like you'll have something at the start and it won't get, even though that is the structure of an arc, that tends to be how it works, but it's very in chunk, like modular.
Yeah, it feels like The Mandalorian in that way, where it's like that, you know, there's a lot of The Mandalorian, you know, especially season 2 and season 3 that people complained about all the goddamn time, where it's like, this feels like a complete non sequitur. What are we doing here? And it's like, no, like this is setting the table for an idea that is going to become very important later. And, you know, so stuff like the red eye, you know, like, you know, super drug, very important again. The stuff with Vicious and these brief glimpses into Spike's past, very important again. We are still coming back to the idea that Spike is a cyborg in some way, which is like a topic that I've not run down that pathway completely, because I'm just kind of like waiting to see what comes of it, because we keep cutting back to some type of procedure, a robotic looking eye, and now this idea that one of Spike's eyes sees the past. And what
does the other one see?
I am stuck reeling just wanting so desperately to know, is that supposed to be a metaphor? Or is that the case? Because if that, again, this is like, it's almost like I'm in a similar position with Evangelion again here, where with Evangelion, it was, we keep playing with biblical metaphor, but the question always was, is this a loose, like, we are doing an act of creation, therefore Genesis, and therefore the ideas within Genesis must now be paid reference to? Or, shit like we are playing with ideas of sacrifice, therefore crucifixion, like visual metaphor and iconography are coming into play. And it being like, not to say that Evangelion is surface level, but that some of those metaphors are kind of surface level. Are we doing that? Then I find myself doing that again with Bebop, where it's like, okay, this troubled guy who is running away from his past, are you literally telling me that part of his subconscious, or part of his conscious mind, is constantly in a state of replay psychologically? Or are you just using really flowery language? Because I can't fucking tell.
Well, I mean, he does go on about Julia quite a bit, or he has done.
Yeah, and this was his opportunity to, maybe catch up with her. Again, I was very fascinated for this to be the confirmation that she is in fact alive.
Is she?
Or at least has recently been seen alive.
A lot can happen in 2 years.
A lot can't happen in 2 years. But, like, she has been seen alive recently enough that, like, people are not explicitly going, oh, there's no way. She is, like, to everybody's knowledge, she is very much in play. And that was interesting because, again, it's the weird disjointed way we keep seeing Spike's origin story of, him falling out of a window and and it's like the two instances of him falling out of a window where it's like him falling and then it's him falling while he was fighting Vicious a couple weeks ago. So we have that, we have the shootout, we have the rose in the puddle, we have the sepia toned building, and we have this, like, these flashes of Julia. It doesn't feel like we're seeing them in order still.
Well, no, because the whole window bit, you're seeing two at the same time, right? So
yeah,
it's not in order.
So I'm very curious about that. I'm very, very curious to see where that's going. What was the person?
Glenn. I think it's Glenn.
Okay.
There's definitely something in, and it starts with a G.
I know. Yeah, it's the. I keep wanting to say Glem.
Yeah.
Because I'm thinking of Clem from Andor. Because I just finished rewatching Andor. Obviously, check out the Nerd Academy podcast for our recent episode with all
boycott all Andor content.
You're absurd. Anyway, Glenn, they are interesting because I have found the show, and it's so funny because I have had a couple moments recently where I'm having that moment where I question, is the show saying something worthy of criticism because it itself is trying to discuss a weird cultural point of contention, or is the show itself playing into a weird cultural point of contention?
Yeah.
Because there have been a number of kind of weird hand wavy umbrella statements about the nature of men and women. And, again, part of me goes, this is a Western. So like, there's a level of, that kind of gender role that exists kind of in an archetypal way, whether or not it is a genre convention that one thinks is appropriate, correct, or worthy of paying homage to, it still exists as a genre convention. Part of me goes, is this the story going, listen to these people say the stupid thing and how these are deeply flawed people. And just because somebody in a story says or does something dumb doesn't make it bad. It is sometimes real people in real life make suboptimal decisions. So too do people in fiction. So I'm trying to like balance those in my mind. Right. And like how do I feel about that? And then Glenn is introduced to the narrative, whom I think is meant to, in my opinion, it kind of helps me come down on, the show is kind of going, hey, doesn't everybody have weird opinions about women in this universe?
Yeah.
By extension, our own real world universe. Because these episodes, they play a lot with gender, and there are people who are much better qualified than me to unpack that. The ways in which it plays with gender. I would love for somebody like Dead Domain or ContraPoints, or no disrespect to them, I just disagree with them on a lot of their analysis, but even Jesse Gender, to tackle that. And I want to clarify, I think Jesse Gender is very smart. I just don't agree with a lot of their conclusions. I think they are good at analysis. It's just difference of opinion. I don't want that to sound like I think they're hacky. I only add that caveat because I know how often I talk about people I do think are hacky. They are not one of them. But them and Dead Domain, I would like to hear their take on these episodes of Cowboy Bebop. Because, for me, I just, it plays gender in such a weird way. You have this world that is devoid of femininity. That's a word I've never actually been good at saying.
Devoid of women.
Devoid of women. Devoid of the feminine, point of view. We have sex workers who are in drag. Some of them in a depiction of drag that kind of aged like milk, but that's not their fault. It's like very much playing with this idea of like what can and cannot exist without the feminine. And the exposure of Glenn, who is at once this suave, talented, performer, deeply charismatic, deeply in touch with their emotions, who has these elements of the feminine, as we would traditionally classify it. They are very in tune with their emotions. They are, a creature of the arts in a city that is full of rough and tumble people who are kind of all part of the scum and villainy of the Cowboy Bebop world. They are, at least as they are presented to the world at large, an artist trying to make their way in this just absolute shithole. And then, of course, we find out that they are involved in the criminal underbelly, and that, they got, there was a frame job and all of that stuff. But, the way they are presented is already so compelling. And then you have them being explicitly queer, that they say, I'm not interested in women. And it's very, 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 very obviously heavily implied that Glenn was in love with Vicious. And I find that such a compelling angle here, especially to give somebody like Vicious somebody from their past who loved them. Because I think Vicious exists in that pocket of villain who, like, is impossible to imagine doing anything other than what we see them do.
Yeah.
Like there are some antagonistic forces in fiction who, despite how like out of this world fantastical the premise of the story is, you can imagine their day to day.
Yeah.
You know, but normally those antagonistic forces who you cannot, like, I can't imagine how Sauron goes to the grocery store. You know, I can't put that in my mind without it being inherently
the
comical.
Witch King to do it. That's how.
Yes, but like, you know what I mean, though. You know,
I know what you
yeah.
mean. I was just making a joke.
I know. I apologize. I'm like trying not to lose momentum but like, you know, it's why with the Rise of Skywalker, I think everybody was so weirded out by like the mechanics of Rey's existence. You know, now of course we got the explanation that she is not a biological grandchild of the Emperor, that it was one of the Emperor's clones who had a kid. But it was a Palpatine who fucked, yes, but regardless, it's like, but like that whole idea of like the Emperor made love. That initial like thing that we had to think of, and I think we all like to joke. Like,
made love is probably a strong.
Sure. The Emperor did fuck.
This man spirals.
Yes.
He's like a pig dick, right? He just corkscrews.
Oh God. But seriously though, like something as mundane and like human as sex, trying to put that in like the bubble of this embodiment of evil is so hard, right? It doesn't make sense.
No.
And what makes Vicious kind of interesting is that normally in a story where you have a guy, yeah, he's a sociopath and he's cold-blooded and he's ruthless and he's violent and he's vicious. How
dare carry on.
But at the end of the day, he's a mob boss. At the end of the day, he's a mob middle manager. And that is kind of the default position the antagonists we're meant to be able to see the day-to-day of are supposed to be in.
Yeah.
You know, so Vicious was at one point a conscripted soldier. I believe that. Vicious once had somebody who loved him. That boggles my mind, you know? Then you see so much of like what made him like this, because even at a younger age, even when things weren't quite as like what they are now for him, he still was like, I don't need anybody.
Vicious. Yeah.
He's still like that. What happened along the way that made him like that? I don't necessarily need an episode about it, but it does give him an air of tragedy. You know, and I think a lot of stories, if you went back to his origin point and he was already the same sack of shit we know him to be, one could make an argument that would make him less compelling. But in this instance, it almost makes him, you know, it takes it from he's a compelling villain to he is maybe the most tragic character in this whole story. Possibly, that there's just something fundamentally that he just cannot accept the idea of camaraderie. You know,
who knows? Maybe it was Spike. Who knows?
What was that?
I said, who knows? Maybe it was Spike.
Maybe it
was Julia. We just don't know.
Time will tell. Time will tell indeed. But anyway, let's say, Glenn, you know, is this kind of synthesis of that, you know, of the tender female, but the rough and tumble man and the rough and tumble male. And, you know, I just thought it was a really interesting interplay with gender and gender role and, you know, these themes of human connection and of camaraderie that, you know, the more, and I love that this also felt like the first time that these characters all collectively, even if they didn't explicitly say the words, in their actions, admitted how much they care about each other.
Yeah.
Faye's little personal bubble of self-obsession gets popped, and all she can think about is Julia and how Julia has affected Spike and how this devil-may-care, debonair gunslinger has gone from high kicks in a casino to I am going to do everything I can to find one person because it means so damn much to me. Why? Who the hell is this guy? You know, Jet, who is all about, you know, I just want my money back. You know, no, motherfucker, you want to rescue Faye. You want her to be safe.
Yeah.
You care. You care. You can say it's about the money all you want. And I'm sure part of it is, but you also, if it came down to it's Faye or the creds, you're taking Faye.
100%. Yeah.
And it's clear. It's clear that's the case. You know, and it comes into Jet trying to big dick Spike a little bit. And when Spike's like, yeah, I didn't get him.
It's like Jet gives him the same performance of I won't let him get away.
Yeah.
She's like, I won't let him get away. No, it's fine. No. It's like, no. Just want the money back. And the antifreeze, obviously, because it's too hot.
But yeah, you know, and it just, it was really beautiful. It was really beautiful. And, you know, I really liked the story I got to go on. Part 2 of Jupiter Jazz has so much finality to it. I had a brief moment of terror at the end because Taylor and I have encountered a glitch with Hulu.
Oh no!
Where it will just seemingly throw us into a random episode.
Oh.
And it's happened before. Now, granted, it's happened when we would be watching Law and Order SVU. Shouts out, there's no fucking baby. And part of that was because like Taylor had like watched it on Hulu before. It couldn't tell like, are you rewatching this episode or are you coming back? So we'll just throw you past this because we think you already finished these ones. And I had a brief moment watching the end of Jupiter Jazz where it didn't go back to Real Folk Blues. You know, it didn't have that. You know, it wasn't just the credits with the bird next to the fucking rose. It was a completely different song, you know, spanning the cosmos. And I legit, for a brief moment, went, did I just watch the series finale? And I'm like jittering my leg. I'm like, did I fucking skip to the end here? Did I break the show? And then I was like, oh, thank God. Okay, we're good.
No, I forgot I did that. Yeah.
But that moment of finality, it felt, you know, like in some ways I had a moment where it was like, I feel like it could end here.
Oh no.
I don't want it to. I want the ending to be more robust in terms of like, where do we end with all of these characters? But there was a part of me that was like, they just went off. You know, I think you could say like Spike learned the lessons he needed to from this adventure. And
Oh, I disagree on that.
No, I'm just saying.
I don't think that's Spike. No.
I'm just saying, as our main character, I'm just saying, like, if this were the end, it leaves him at such a crossroads that I could imagine, like, where he goes from here. You know, in the same way that one of the Star Wars YouTubers I like a lot. I don't agree with a lot of his takes, but he's not a jackass about it. Evan Nova 95. Like, he's talked a lot about recently how if it were up to him, as much as he loves the legend stories that came after, he could imagine like the Yuuzhan Vong War series of books being the end of the EU. And like where the story lands at the end of the New Jedi Order novels, he's like, yeah, I could imagine that was the end of the story. And I, like, you reacted to me, I don't want that. You know, I much prefer the follow-up we got, but I could see it.
I mean, even then, like, even with, too far, I might be clouded by the whole knowing the ending and everything, but I don't think I agree that this would be like, or even could be an ending for this show.
But time will tell. Time will tell. Like I said, for me, that was just a moment of like, huh. I wonder. But anyway, I think that's all I got for this one.
Do you know what I found really funny about
what?
The third one is in the dogfight, which is a really good dogfight, by the way. It's really well animated.
Yes.
Spike uses the laser on the missile.
Yeah, wild decision.
Just like, really? That is a
wild choice.
That as you have one shot and you hit one thing. Well done for hitting this thing, by the way. It's a small target, but
yeah, I mean, unless he was convinced that if that missile makes contact, it's game the fuck over.
I mean, so sure, it would be. But you've got like your Gatling gun.
Using that as defense when it seems like an offensive, like one hit KO is a wild choice.
It's like lead with that in the start of the dogfight. Sure, there wouldn't be a show afterwards because it would have taken Vicious out of the picture more than likely. But it's an opener. Lead with it.
Yeah. No, that is funny. That is funny.
But yeah, Spike's existential boredom, I guess. Not thinking clearly. He's like, you know what? If I miss, I miss. If I die, I die.
Thank you, Fine Julia. Love it. Having so much fun with it. Having so much fun with it.
Good. Because we are very quickly barreling towards the end.
We are. Yeah,
in fact, we're halfway through now, aren't we?
I think so.
Yeah, it's 26 episodes, 13. Halfway. The magic point. What's going to happen? Who knows? I know you probably know.
Mitch does.
He doesn't. It feels wrong pointing this way and you pointing that way as well on my screen. Because like no one's pointing at anyone. That was.
No, but we're both pointing at each other.
It's gonna. So anyway, like, comment, subscribe, do all the good stuff. Follow Jarod on all the stuffs.
Yes.
Link trees. TNAP Nerd Academy.
By the time you're seeing this at home, the next episode of Ionized Bastards will be out. So again, get caught up on Ionized Bastards. I'm saying that because we are recording tonight. So I don't know what happened.
Oh, you're triple dipping tonight.
I'm triple dipping tonight.
Wow.
Yeah, because I got to get stuff out so that I can go on vacation.
Christ. Vacation, yet you're recapping Star Wars Celebration for the week.
Of course I am.
Only you would be like, I need to get away and have vacation. Star Wars. Like, you fucking nerd. Honestly.
Yeah. If they did Evangelion Celebration, I think you'd be like glued to whatever. You know?
Don't.
I also have the benefit of Celebration happening in the middle of the night for me.
There is that, yeah.
So all I have to do is wake up, aggregate news, talk about it for 30 minutes live, and then go away. Speaking of, Because this will be coming out the week I'll be doing that, because time is messing with me.
Yeah.
On the Nerd Academy podcast, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday mornings, Eastern Time, we are going to be going live to discuss the goings-on at Star Wars Celebration. I'm going to be live from Kentucky with Bill Sheehy of formerly of Skywalking Through the League and dear friend of the show. Me and Bill were both planning on going to Celebration. That didn't work out. So instead, we are all going to be hanging out together, talking about that galaxy far, far away every day for you guys to keep up to date. And then I do plan on doing a like full Celebration like episode of KNR, probably with at least one or two of our colleagues who were at the show, as well as I know I'll be guesting on Page Turners They Were Not to also talk about all the news out of Celebration. So yeah, stay tuned over at the Nerd Academy for Star Wars Celebration. It's another Celebration year, and you know, I think we're gonna get a trailer for Mando and Grogu, and I'm not gonna be able to contain myself.
Honestly.
But yeah.
Look at his face. He's so happy about it, though.
I am happy. I'm like, it's hitting me that like there's about to be a lot of Star Wars news all at once.
You can always tell Jared's happy. He gets like the
Yeah, I got dimples. I got dimples on my chubby cheeks.
It's like, no, bless him. Like childlike whimsy.
Yes. Yes. I go through the world with unbelievable whimsy. That was damning.
I'll make it a third time. It's a strong word.
What?
Or you going through the world with a childlike whimsy. It's still a strong phrase. I don't think anyone that's got an actual crash out video of the acolyte of themselves online can claim they have childlike whimsy. But
I do. I was also crashing out because I still do. I still have that whimsy. I am a whimsical motherfucker.
It's an ember inside. It's not the flame.
That's not true. But anyway, thank you all so much. I'm not listening to Mitch defame my
Watch
whimsy
Gundam
anymore.
Quacks, because it's out now. And shit's good. It's got the sauce. Go watch that.
See you, Space Cowboy.
And we'll see you, Space Cowboy.